That's incredible. And I don't really want to just gloss over that. I want people to take just a second and think about what your job is and then compare that to somebody giving you a freaking cyanide pill, a knife, and a parachute and saying, all right, with these tools, go fight a war. Like, holy crap.
If anyone wanted to look up the Australian War Memorial, they have a website. There's heaps and heaps of books and stories and little documentaries and whatnot on guys who are actually doing that, And a lot of them are never seen again, whether it be injured on parachuting into a jungle terrain, captured by headhunters, that were working with the Japanese, or the Japanese would get them and, shoot them as spies or cut their heads off. A lot of them guys were never seen again.
These are stories of outdoor adventure and expert advice from folks with calloused hands. I'm James Nash, and this is the Six Ranch Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Today I have with me Al Kidner, all the way from Australia. How are you, sir?
Good, James. Good, mate. I'm doing well, albeit, dealing with what everyone else is dealing with in the world with the shutdown of COVID and whatnot. But yeah, I'm doing fine, man.
What's that like in your area?
Well, I live in Queensland, which is a northern state. We had our borders shut, then we opened them, then we've just reshut them again to the other states. We have I think we have like 3 cases, but all our southern states like New South Wales, Victoria in the main at the moment has had a massive second wave. Nothing like what you guys have in the States, but for our limited exposure to the virus and whatnot, I think the last couple of days running, they've had, anywhere from 15 to 20 people die in a day, which is like more than what we normally have seen over here, which again is not a drop in the ocean compared to what the States or Europe or anywhere else has. But for us, obviously, it's alarming because, we just don't want to go crazy. But, not to be a conspiracy theorist, but it depends on what news outlet you watch and, on the severity of it and all the rest of it.
Yeah, it's much the same here. And, of course, I have no idea what kind of news you're getting about the States in Australia. But, in my county, which, takes 5 hours to drive across, there's been one person who has died of COVID throughout all this. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I sort of don't get with it all. And not to have the whole COVID conversation, but obviously it's where the world is. But it's more of a case where I just feel for like a lot of the regional towns and, we're a vast and spread out country here, and you've got like a lot of inland towns and small cities that have no cases of it, but because they're in a certain state, they have to follow the state-run guidelines. So a lot of these small businesses are being crippled, whether they be, mum and dad businesses, service stations, gas stations, whatever, hotels, pubs, clubs, all that, they're all feeling it. And because people in the city, can't follow a few simple rules and whatever. What is the end state of all this? I don't know, whether we throw our hands up in the air and just deal with it, or we continue with the crazy lockdown and all that mask stuff. So yeah, I don't know, mate. I'll let some smarter folk look after that.
How big is Queensland?
If you have a look on a map, we're a decent size. I don't know, square meterage, feet, all the rest of it. We're a decent sized state. It's probably a second or third largest state in Australia, and it's on the eastern seaboard. Pretty much cuts the country in half, and then into half again, if that makes sense. And runs from half the country all the way up to the northern tip of Australia. So yeah, and we have got quite a vast topographical sort of feel about the state as well. You got deserts, you got tropical rainforest, you got areas that get a little bit of snow in the winter, which we're in currently at the moment, right up to the tropics up north, because it pretty much bumps onto PNG to our north. So yeah, we're quite a diverse state topographically wise.
So if I started up north and drove to the south end of Queensland, how long would that take me?
Well, our road system, further north you get, the worse they get. It's just we don't have the road systems like you guys have. So if you start on the tip of Australia and drove to our border in the south, you could probably do it in 24 hours. Yeah, the roads as they sort of get from Cairns north, like they get sort of they run out from there, and then Cooktown and whatnot. But yeah, from that's a rough sort of guide. And obviously, as you get south, the roads get better because more population live on the coast, and the roads are better. And all. I mean, we're not prehistoric, but as you from sort of Cairns north, what I'm trying to say is, there's the dirt roads up to the Cape because it's still a frontier type area up there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm just trying to give folks a little bit of scope for the scale of Australia, because much like Africa, in a lot of ways, people in the States here, we still talk about Africa like it's a country, and really have no concept of how large it is, and very much the same with Australia. Like, we don't talk about states in Australia, and when all the fires were going on, people were like, well, Australia is on fire. It's like, well, parts of Australia are on fire, but not all of Australia is on fire. That would be difficult to manage.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. It's funny because I've spent a fair amount of time in Africa, and it's funny because people just think Africa is one country, and that is South Africa, and that's it. But it's such a diverse, and Google Maps is your best friend. Just bring up Google Maps and zoom in and out, and you will see all the states of Australia. And then to talk about Africa, you see all the different countries within the African continent, the subcontinent, the Northern Saharas, and quite a diverse part of, diverse, dare I say it, planet or continent, which is Africa. But yeah, people sort of think, oh yeah, Africa's one country. No, it is many. And it's funny because, not to talk about Africa now, but you get on an international flight, as you know, like you'll land in South Africa, you have to get on an international flight to fly to Namibia or to Zambia or Tanzania because they are separate countries. So yeah, it's classed as an international flight, even though you're in the same continent, but they're different countries.
And it's not like countries in Europe, which you can almost skip a rock across in places. Yes. It's like you're going to get on that airplane and you're going to be on that plane and you're going to eat a meal on that plane before you get to the next country. Yeah, it's big.
Exactly. No.
Yeah. So were you affected by fires in your area?
Not particularly where we were. It was an incredibly dry season, and it was mainly down to the south of me and to the west of us as well, to where we live. So states like New South Wales, Queensland had its number of bushfires, as we call them here. The main terrible ones were New South Wales and also Victoria, just because of a number of reasons. We were in a drought that was unprecedented. A lot of, and from what I'm sort of surmising here, from what I know, we had a lot of dry foliage on the ground through lack of backburning, and there was a number of inquiries that transpired out of that due to the lack of government control or backburning and all the rest of it. So, and a lot of the older generation, saying that we went wrong in managing because we've always had bad fires. And what happens is, in a nutshell, the hot air in the summer flows through the centre of Australia and causes these incredibly hot winds, and then that couples with dry grass and deadfall and all the rest of it in the bush, and it's just a tinderbox and does not take. And then they get dry lightning as well, so no storms but lightning that kicks off and can set off those fires, and they can pretty much predict. They'll say, in the next 2 or 3 days it's going to be extreme fire conditions. Everyone has their phone hooked up to a text messaging system and all the rest of it. If you're in these areas, they will text you and say, you need to be aware, bad fires this time of day or whatever. They're quite onto it, but still we lost a number of lives from even seasoned firefighters were killed trying to battle the blazes. We had a couple of US pilots that were killed as well, and a plane went down. The guys were over from the States as volunteers. They crashed their plane, I think, doing some sort of like the fire retardant run as well. So, yeah, it was quite a busy time. But then, unfortunately, that all got forgotten because then COVID kicked off, and obviously that is everything in the news, as we know.
Yeah, we went from caring about koalas to completely forgetting about it really quickly.
Yeah.
I fought wildfire, bushfires, all the way through college, and as I finished high school as well, and paid for college doing it, and it was a great job, but it is extremely dangerous, and everybody knows going into that you are taking part in an extremely dangerous job, and the way that you die doing that job is never pretty. There's not a graceful way to die as a firefighter, and everybody signs that bill and is willing to accept that risk. And it's just very sad when it happens.
It is, and it's a brave profession. Like I in my current role, I work for a traffic company and as a first responder, and I deal with crashes and whatnot in the Brisbane metro area, and constantly dealing with emergency services, fireys, police, and medics and whatnot. But the fireys definitely, I take my hat off to them. They earn their stripes and earn their wage, and it's probably a bit of a thankless task as well. Like they don't get paid the best, but you do those sorts of roles, a bit like the military, as you know. You're not doing them roles for monetary value. You're doing them because you for a number of reasons, but it's the feel-good thing of doing something with pride that has a steeped history in doing the right thing, and you're sort of judged on that in a stereotype as well, I do believe, from society that if you're a firefighter, you're a decent guy, sort of thing, or person, woman, whatever, to sound PC.
Yeah. I wouldn't go so far as to say that they're decent. Having been one and around quite a few of them, that might be pushing it too far. But
well, what I mean is, if you go for a bank loan and the bank manager goes, "Oh, you're a firefighter, yeah, right, no worries. You're a decent, supposedly a decent, upstanding member of the community, as opposed to I don't know, someone that doesn't work for a living, I guess, is what I'm trying to
say. So you served time in the military. Did you have any jobs before you went into the military, or was that pretty early on in your career?
Yeah, when I finished high school, it was sort of that wake up moment where, and I always say this, and my mother laughs because I keep saying to her that she'd say to me, "Al, go to school, eat your lunch." So that's all I did. I went to school and ate my lunch. I didn't learn anything. So, I went to school, played sports, chased girls, played more sports and chased more girls, and fitted in, time in the bush, and just being your typical sort of kid. It was hard for me to concentrate because I was always looking out the window and, whether it be trying to go fishing or hunting or whatever as a kid. So, and when school finished, you get that very poignant moment where the bell goes and you think, wow, that's awesome. Now what? So I was lucky enough I grabbed the trade. A friend of the family said that there was apprenticeships going down the road for a building company as a carpenter. So I lucked onto that. But I had a few friends that had signed up and were going away to the military, to the army mainly. Another mate of mine, he went into the Air Force, which, he's just a civvy in uniform anyway. But so I had 3 or 4 good mates went away to the army. I got this trade, and it was always in the back of my mind that I was constantly reading books on the military, on the first Gulf War, that kind of thing, history books, because I've always been a fan of history and geography as such. Then I finished my trade early because it was a 4-year apprenticeship. Finished it in 3 years, and then I signed up and went away to the army from there.
How does the military kind of break down in Australia? So here in the States, we've got Army, Navy, Marine Corps that are the military, and then we have the Air Force that I think they like mostly just do like air conditioning tours, but they
Yeah,
also have
ice cream.
yeah, they do also have the Warthog, which is a terrific aircraft. So I guess yeah, there's a portion of the Air Force that's in the military, and then we have the Coast Guard, and then I guess it's like Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts after that. So how does it break down in Australia?
Well, yeah, we have our, well, they call it the Defence Force because obviously we're an island. So since World War II, we've been defending our shores as such from local incursions, whether it be Indonesia, China, uh, Japan during World War II. So obviously we have they call it a defence force, but inside that we have the Army, the Air Force, and the Navy. Obviously, being an island, we've got a decent sized Navy. It has been. It's called the Royal Australian Navy because obviously we're a Commonwealth country. The Air Force, yep, they are quite handy as well. We used to run the F-111s, which even when they, if anyone knows planes, the F-111 was still a kick-ass low radar bomber that up until retirement, nothing could match it in its capabilities. I think now the Air Force have signed up. We've got F-18 Hornets, and then we're going to go to the new. I'm just trying to think of the new planes. Boeing, is it Boeing? The Raptors.
I'm not that skookum on fighter planes. We're still working on the
Yeah,
F-35. I don't know if we've even got that thing operational
okay.
yet.
I'm pretty sure it's called the Raptor. Anyway, I'm not a plane guy, but I know we're getting a good bucket full of them. Yeah, and obviously we used to have Leopard tanks in the Army and labs and whatnot based on what you guys, but now we're rolling with Abrams. So all our Abrams are all based on the northern region because that's obviously where our biggest threat is if our friends and northern neighbours decide that Australia was going to be the next Indonesian island. And yeah, that's where all our armoured units are based, and they're, again, running labs. 8 older or upmarket APCs, labs, and the M1 Abrams, which I think you spent time in, yeah?
Yeah, that was my main squeeze. I was an M1A1 Abrams platoon commander, so I had 4 of those things. And
Yeah, right.
When I was in Afghanistan, the Marines had one company of tanks there. I think the Danes had a company of tanks that never left the wire. So we had the only tanks in the entire country that were actually out doing things.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, that is pretty much our makeup. Our army pretty much has been in a lot of conflict since we were federated as a country. So we went and fought in the Boer War in South Africa. That was our first deployment as a country, and that was, obviously on horseback fighting the Boers in South Africa. And Australian troops handled themselves extremely well as the New Zealanders, because we were outback style. Everyone was on horseback. It was just part of our ethos, our culture, pretty much. So we took it to the Boers at the time because they were the enemy. This day and age, we're actually quite close to the South Africans for a number of reasons. But yeah, and then throughout history in the last 100-odd years plus, we've punched above our weight in a number of different armed conflicts. Korea, World War One, World War Two. I should say World War One, Korea, World War Two. Obviously Vietnam. A lot of peacekeeping skirmishes we've been involved in sort of our region as well. And then obviously the big ones at the moment, which is Iraq and Afghanistan. We've held our own there as well in, the limited capabilities that we can as a small country, but also to, help our allies and, stand on the neck of terrorism and general arseholes that are criminal elements that carry a weapon too.
What was your specialty in the Army?
I was in the infantry, so I signed up, did 10 or just short of 10 years, 9 years something in the infantry. Served in 1RR in Townsville, which is 1st Battalion Royal Australian Regiment. In that time, it was all, we're an infantry battalion, so we were considered light infantry, so helicopter insertions, helicopter extractions, that classic Vietnam sort of green roll, that was our mainstay, our bread and butter. So we did a lot of our our jungle training up in a place called Tully, which is up in the tropics, not far from Cairns, in far north Queensland. It rains. They measure the rain there in metres, so not in feet and inches, but in metres. That's how much it rains there a year. And as the saying goes, if you can operate in the jungle, you can operate anywhere, whether it be open country, desert, savannah. Because it's just incredibly, everything is difficult in the jungle, from, nighttime, daytime. Everything tries to bite you, sting you, eat you, drown you, put a rash on you, or suck the living life out of you. And that, a lot of those tactics that we are still implemented today were just born out of when we had operations in places like New Guinea during World War II, all the islands, and then Borneo, Malaya, against the Indonesian incursion that we had there back in the 50s. And even in World War II, we had a lot of our commando units were raised, and they would just be parachuted into an island in the middle of nowhere with, a cyanide pill, a commando dagger, a small radio, a cut down shortened 303, and just told her, you parachute in there, rustle up some local sympathisers and go and kill Japs. That was their orders. So, and that, like I said, all our jungle training and whatnot has derived out of that, and which has held us in good stead, because when Vietnam rolled around, we were there for 10 plus years in the southern provinces of Vietnam, and held our own there as well. So a lot of people don't realize it.
That's incredible. And I don't really want to just gloss over that. I want people to take just a second and think about what your job is, and then compare that to somebody giving you a frickin' cyanide pill, a knife, and a parachute, and saying, all right, with these tools, go fight a war. Holy crap.
If anyone wanted to look up the Australian War Memorial, they have a website. There's heaps and heaps of books and stories and little documentaries and whatnot on guys who are actually doing that, and a lot of them are never seen again, whether it be injured on parachuting into a jungle terrain, captured by headhunters, that were working with the Japanese, or the Japanese would get them and, shoot them as spies or cut their heads off. A lot of them guys were never seen again. A lot of them were seen again. One example is a commando unit. They had a small Indonesian fishing vessel that they sailed from Sydney up the Cape into, I think it was, I'm not up to speed with my commando history, but I'm pretty sure they went into the Philippine harbour and blew up a lot of Japanese boats that were stationed there at the time. They did that a couple of times, got caught. They were all executed, all the rest of it. So, because at the time, Australia we were bracing for invasion from Japan. They were in New Guinea, obviously all the islands around that, Bougainville, the Solomon Islands. So they had their eyes on Australia, and they weren't stopping. We stopped them at New Guinea on the Kokoda track and drove them back into the ocean. And a lot of those veterans from World War II that are still around, they quite, with a smirk on their face, say, we pushed them back into the ocean when we shot them on the beach. And they don't deny that, because that's just what they did. And the Japanese army at the time were undefeatable. You guys in the Solomons and Guadalcanal were copping a hiding off them as well. So they were quite forceful. And, as we know, the Japanese army at the time they were hell-bent on dominating Southeast Asia. And, of course, Australia had a plan to actually, they called it the Brisbane line, where we pretty much cut the country in half from Brisbane right across to the west. And we're going to give them all the north of Australia, and then basically meet them at the Brisbane line, and fight them from there. So, and that's quite hospitable hospitable country, very dry, very arid, a lot of deserts. They would have been doing extremely well to push their way through there. And then obviously the plan was then to cut them off and then encircle them and end them, but they didn't get that far. You guys sorted them out with Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and a couple of planes that flew there and reminded them just who they were playing with. So,
well, Australia was was strategically critical. And I'm not completely knowledgeable about World War II history, but I read a fantastic book called Indestructible. Did you ever come across that one?
No, I
It
haven't.
was it was about a guy named Pappy Gunn, and he was retired Army Air Force, because
Mm-hmm.
we hadn't had an Air Force yet, but he was flying for the Army, and
Mm-hmm.
he was trying to stand up a private airline in the Philippines, and
Okay.
he was flying military folks in and out of Australia when the Japanese took the Philippines and put his family in a concentration camp.
Yep.
And he basically forced himself back into enlistment and ended up just bullying his way into building these bomber aircraft, and really pushing guns hard into these airplanes in ways that they had to like relocate fuel in the aircraft so that he could carry the amount of 50 cals that he was putting in the front of these bombers.
Yeah.
But if it
Right.
wasn't for Australia's location and support, there's no way that the Americans could have went across the Pacific in the way that they did. You know,
Yeah.
it was very much teamwork. And when I was in Afghanistan, of course, different war, different place,
Yep.
but the things that we did were impossible without the Australians as well. So I worked with Task Force 66, the commandos, out of Melbourne, I think, and they're incredible.
Yeah. I think they're based in Sydney. I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure they're in Sydney.
Could be Sydney, yeah. Um, you know, they're, and I tell people all the time, these guys were the most professional and proficient fighting force that I've ever seen. Absolutely incredible guys, and I
Yeah. Well,
have the
thanks.
utmost respect for them and for you.
Uh, by all means, I thank you for the compliment. I wasn't a commando, and plenty of my mates were, and I still mates with them today that were obviously served and worked in Afghanistan as commando, and they held their own and took the fight to the enemy because they had a reputation to live up to. You know, they're Australian commandos and just hardworking. And like any selection course, it's quite a hard course to pass. So they had a different role than our SAS in Afghanistan, and they took it to the enemy, which is their job, you know, commando, and they took their fair share of casualties. I lost a couple of mates that I worked with before they were commandos, and yeah, we've all lost mates, I guess, in the job, but um, they certainly held their own, and they took the fight to the enemy, which, you know, they do not deny that's what they're there for. They're hard charges, and they're like that, you know. They'd rather be out of the wire than in the wire.
And it's interesting what you say about training in the jungle, because these guys all painted their faces during operations, and they all painted their faces in greens and blacks.
Mm.
And there's nothing green where we were in Afghanistan except for these dudes' faces. And I found that in some ways peculiar, but in other ways, it makes all the sense in the world to me from a historical and psychological perspective. People have been painting their faces when they're hunting and when they're
Hmm.
fighting for as long as we've figured out that we can put something on our face to change its color. And I
Exactly.
think that it does change your mindset a little bit. And they were very intimidating. These dudes were fierce.
Yeah, they would have been doing it like for all of the above. From day one in the Australian Army, when you take your fieldcraft lessons, it's rammed down your neck. You know, cam up. You know, as in face paint, watches covered. If you're not wearing gloves, you cam your hands up, back of the neck, back of the ears. Everything is to be camouflage, non-rattles, all that sort of stuff, and they are literally will jump down your throat, and that's just in basic training. And then obviously, if you go into the School of Infantry, which is where I went, you spend a minimum of 3 months there uh, on your basic infantry course, and that again, they just honing them skills. And heaven forbid if you're halfway through that course and you wear a watch that someone can see the face on, or something rattles or squeaks, or even to the point where water bottles, if a patrol commander or a section commander of an infantry section can hear someone's water bottle sloshing on a patrol, be prepared for a slap up the side of the head, or at least a hairy eyeball staring at you going, you better fucking tighten that up or I'm going to knock your teeth out. So, yeah, that's pretty much, yeah.
In some of the schools that I was in, face painting was definitely a thing anytime that you were operational in the woods. And it was the same thing. Like you cover absolutely every single surface, including the inside of your ears. And in the early, like, officer candidate school stuff, when, everything is under a microscope, if somebody didn't get all of the paint out from the inside of their ears and every little nook and cranny in the 37 seconds you had to clean your face before you moved on to the next thing, it's this giant eruption. How dare you,
Yeah, how dare you not be bathed or clean in my lesson. Yeah, been there, yeah. And I've been on the giving end of that as well. But when I went, and this is the sort of the highlight of, like, I went through in a time, and I wasn't that old. Like, I'm only 45. So, and my son is now in the same unit I was in up in Townsville. And my daughter, she is currently living with me now. She's just waiting for her enlistment date. So she's hopefully heading into combat engineers. So it's definitely in the family. But when I went through, and I'm not that old and not to raise, well, back in my day sort of scenario, but if we'd be doing an exercise, and you'd have your directing staff, your staff that are there running the course or whatever, and they would be standing there with big long sticks about as thick as your thumb, because they wouldn't be armed, or they wouldn't have a firearm or anything. They would just be walking through, watching you do your drills in the bush or in the jungle, whatever. And if you were doing the wrong thing, they should just walk up to you and whack the living piss out of you with this stick. And you'd be laying on your stomach in a contact or whatever with blanks, of course. And they would just walk up and whack you with that stick, and you'd look at them and they would say, you know what that is? No, Sergeant. That's 7.62 short slamming into your body. Move over there. So you learnt pretty quick, or you'd be writing a set of orders or something on your notebook, and the platoon sergeant or whoever's watching you, and the staff would walk up, same thing, give you a tap with their little stick, going, see that? Yeah. Why aren't you writing your orders on your guts? Oh, okay. So you lay down on your stomach, be writing your orders. So that's how you learn. And the soldiering is taken, obviously, quite serious, because, poor soldiers die and lazy soldiers die, and they're quick to raise those notes and opinions on you.
Yeah, sweat prevents blood.
It does. Train hard, fight easy. And they're all little quotes that we've heard a million times, and some people take lip service to them, but they work. As well as I do that is the case.
Yeah, for sure. So you were deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan?
I did. So when I was in, I had 3 deployments locally. So we went into East Timor twice, which is a UN mission. In a nutshell, it was East Timor wanted independence from Indonesia. They got independence. The Indonesian army decided they didn't like that, so they then torched the place, handed out firearms to a local militia, got pretty crazy. So we went in there to basically tell them to fuck right off. And we did so quite successfully, and we did it in 2 different roles. So we had a very UN sanctioned looking setup where we'd have our blue berets on and very overtly patrolling, and then we had what we call green hat, where we went out and guarded the borders in classic Vietnam style, anywhere from up to 15-day patrols along the border, fully cam, all the rest of it, searching for insurgencies and Indonesian, at the time, their special forces, which is called Kopassus, was very heavily involved with the local militia, so we're dealing with those. And there was a few contacts, obviously, between us and them across the border. So that was a classic Vietnam-era green role that we did to remove that threat element. So I did 2 tours of that. Another trip out to the Solomon Islands with a little punch-up we had with the people from Solomon Islands, bit of a UN peace sort of peacekeeping operation, I guess you could call that. Then I got out, bummed around for a while, and weighed up whether getting out was a good thing or not. And then work come up in the obviously the security element, contracting element in Iraq and then in Afghanistan. I started in Iraq running convoys and PSD work there.
And what's PSD work for the folks that don't know?
Personal security detail, which is basically, I worked for a company called Armour Group when I was in Iraq. We had a number of different contracts running convoys, PSD work, and a lot of the PSD work I did there at the time was actually, we moved a lot of Army personnel, Army stores. A couple of times we'd have captains, majors from the US Army, and we would take them to different meetings because, and I don't know how, I didn't sort of get involved with the whys or whatnots of the contracts, but Armour Group had the contract to move certain personnel from point A to point B, and a lot of times it was, from memory, EOD staff on all the outward lying massive bunkers that were all let go by Saddam when the place fell. So we would take out EOD staff, and they would set up these massive big camps in different parts of the desert and log and destroy all the ordnance that were just laying there, I guess. So that was one role, and then I used to moonlight with the guys from the convoy teams because they were always short on numbers because they were always getting shot or blown up. So they needed a certain amount of expats, Europeans, to run with the locals, and we used to do a lot of convoys from Baghdad down south to as far as Basra and north as far as Mosul, and then out west past lovely places called Fallujah, Ramadi. And had lots of fun, lots of close scrapes, and learned a lot about myself and a lot about people and humanity and good and bad and everyone. At the time was the height of the insurgency in Iraq, and some pretty ordinary days there. Some, and you see some funny shit too. Some good times and bad times. But that's the world I was in, and that was the path I chose. So I was there probably a year and a half. That contract dried up. I came home, and then I went and worked. I got offered another contract in Afghanistan at the time, working out of Kabul again with Armour Group. And that was another PSD contract where we were driving around Kabul, just taking all the Europeans that were there at the time to rewrite the laws of the country. And wasn't the best contract I'd been on. They were actually a pain in the ass to work for. These are, what PSD missions are like. So you're trying to give a vehicle to brief to someone that doesn't want to wear the body armor. They don't want to wear a helmet. Some of the women would turn up in high heels. At the time, Kabul had and Kabul was different to Baghdad, where they had still a large number of local restaurants that were still running, and there was a big drinking culture between the expats, and, you had to drink at the Gander Mac and all these different places. You'd get a job at 7:00 at night that such and such client wanted to be taken to the Gander Mac for dinner, so you'd have to go there, wait there, and they would come out heavily intoxicated, drunk, and you try to say to them, look, we get shot, and if you're bleeding, it's not going to stop, and you need to put your body armor on and need to wear your helmet. And so that caused a bit of fraction here and there at times. That's the life of a security contractor, really.
Driving around in these countries is not like driving around any place that anyone is listening to this podcast.
No.
IEDs, improvised explosive devices, roadside bombs, they are really stressful. And these guys got pretty good at placing them and predicting places that you're going to be driving, when you're going to be driving. Oh, yeah. There's all kinds of methods for detonation. And the way I kind of describe it, that feeling to people is like, okay, imagine that I put you in a square room and you are barefoot in the corner of that room, and I blindfold you, and you know that there are 1,000 mouse traps in that room, but there's a path that you can walk and you won't step on any of them. Like, would you be able to do it? And that's like a very small amount of stress, because the worst case scenario is that a mouse trap snaps one of your toes. Now, imagine that mouse trap kills you and all of your friends.
Yeah.
And then that's your entire life. Like, everywhere you go, you're living with that amount of stress.
Yeah. And like you said, the war on terror, has been kicking off for 90 odd years. We've been dealing with that, and the lengths that they have gone to really upskill their craft at laying IEDs, putting them in places of, human movements, where people would walk, where people would drive, and even, funneling into those elements. They were notorious for doing it in Iraq, where they'd have a dodgy vehicle, that looked like a car bomb, because that's what they used to do in the early days, was they just have an old broken down vehicle on the side of the road, and before anyone learnt, they would just drive past it and they would just detonate that vehicle and wipe out the lead vehicle or whatever in your convoy. Then they got cunning, because then we'd work out, we'll just, drive around that. Well, then they'd put it on the other side. So, they catch you on the off shoulder and hit you that way, or they would daisy chain 155 or 105 rounds all along the guardrails and set them off by deck quarter. And, you got all them, basically it's like a big shape charge, just smashing you up the side of your vehicles. And that's just the nature of the beast. And it's luck. It's, as you know, I'd rather be lucky than good sometimes. But you're right. They learn very quickly, and they're constantly changing and upschooling and using drones and my hat's off to them EOD guys. They're constantly trying to reinvent the wheel and work out how to better it and how to combat. Because they're not, and some of them are dumb, like obviously insurgents, but some of them are extremely smart, and they still catching people today.
One of the scenarios I was in, I was overwatching a road, and we had very specific criteria for who we could engage and what action they had to be taking in order to do it. And I watched this guy come along and dig a hole and then leave. It's like, okay, can't kill a guy for digging a hole. And then somebody else came along later and put a big yellow jug, which was full of an IED compound in the hole.
Yep.
And then he left. Can't kill a guy for that. And it went on like that. And I don't want to go through the entire sequence on a podcast for how an IED gets built, but it went on sequentially with each individual of this team adding a component to it until it was a finished IED. And none of these things was enough for me to be able to legally engage these guys.
Yeah. And they know that. They're sharp on regards to rules of engagement. What do you
so
what do you
frustrating.
do in that situation? Yeah, and they've been doing that. And say Iraq, they learnt the same in Iraq. What they couldn't, what would draw fire to them, what wouldn't. Their intel would be just as reaching as on us as what we have on them. They know. And Afghan was terrible for it, where they would get kids and set them on the front of motorbikes and that sort of thing. Because we wouldn't shoot them and all the rest of it. So, depends on, again, what unit you're there as well, on whether that actually they would engage them. But 9 times out of 10, they know the rules of engagement. They know how to circumnavigate that to do their job.
And while these people are not technologically advanced, they have been at war for every single generation for 1,000 years, for 2,000 years. I don't know, forever.
Yeah.
Like, warfighting has been part of their life for their entire existence.
Yes.
And they're very, very good at surviving.
Oh yeah, and extremely hard. I spent probably a year and a half living in Kabul and driving the roads there. out to Jalalabad and on all that areas. And Kabul was like the history of Kabul. It was founded when Alexander the Great's army stopped there along the river. That's how Kabul kicked off. Was all the locals. Then the army camp was built, and then the markets places and all that. That's how Kabul was raised. And there's a wall around Kabul. I'm pretty sure, and don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure it is the second oldest wall in the world. And you can see it from Kabul, and it sort of goes along the ridgeline. It's very similar to the Great Wall of China, but not as big and not as detailed. But it's this old crumbling wall. And I had people from the British Embassy used to want to walk the wall, and we'd try and say to them, because I had mates on the British Embassy contract, and they would say to them, you don't want to do that because, we've got to carry a heavy machine gun and this and this and this just so you can get your photo taken on a wall. So again, dealing with clients. But it's an amazing, like Kabul, not Kabul, but Afghanistan itself is such an amazing, beautiful place. Like where it is, it's that whole desert region, snow, and it can be quite striking if it wasn't everyone there wanting to kill you or not have you there anyway.
Yeah, it was different where I was on the north end of Helmand, and it was just so bleak down there.
Yes, it is. Yeah. The Marines were there a fair bit, weren't you?
Yeah, that Helmand was the AO of the Marine Corps for the most part.
Because you took over from the British. Yeah.
Yeah, and we shared that main base with the Brits. So, the two times that I got banged up when I went back to, Camp Bastion, Camp Leatherneck, the hospital was British, and it was on the Bastion side. And that was all British, which was nice. There's some very nice British nurses who I appreciate.
Yeah, everyone likes a nurse. Well, most of them anyway. Yeah, that was. I still hold a lot of obviously mixed emotions and memories, as you would too, from that part of the world. It's certainly an amazing place. But like you said, they've been fighting there for a long time. And a good book to read on that is Stephen Pressfield's book, The Afghan Campaign. That probably highlights what their culture is like. The Afghan people to a degree. That's based.
I agree.
Yeah. Have you read that book?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. But now, that's that chapter of our lives is behind us, probably.
Yeah.
And we're into hunting. Like, I've always been into hunting. Have you always hunted?
Yeah. Pretty much most of my life. My grandfather and father, we like I said, I grew up in Northern Australia, so there was deer around, but not on the numbers that we see now. Like obviously the populations have exploded now. But my grandfather, he used to shoot dingoes / wild dogs for the local council, who he used to work for. He used to have to check all the roads out in the way up in the regions, for flood damage and all the rest of it. So he used to shoot the wild dogs and they'd scalp them for the bounty. He actually bought a rifle with all the scalps that he got. So I've spent a lot of time with him in the bush driving. He actually taught me how to shoot. Had my own air rifle I think I was 8 when I had my own air rifle. And if I didn't have my air rifle on me, I had a slingshot. If I didn't have a slingshot, I had a pocket knife, or all of the above. So and then as a young fella, was, as I said before, I couldn't get enough time in the bush fishing, throwing rocks, building bows, slingshots, all that sort of stuff. That was just how I grew up. That's how kids grew up, where I grew up in a small little rural town. So, yeah.
You build your own arrows now. Do you build your own bows?
No, I don't. I have thought about it, and it's just one of them things where, in my mind, if you're going to do something, you got to do it right. And the house we got here sort of doesn't enable me to have a full wood workshop, if that makes sense, in order to have dust extractors and all that sort of thing. Because to me, that's how, if I was going to build, and there's probably people listening to this going, "Oh, you don't need all that to build bows," and you're probably right, you don't. But as I said, if I was going to build bows, I'd want to do it properly, and then I'll look at it along the lines of, if I was going to build a bow, I don't think I'd be able to build it to the quality that is available now. So why sort of start? Whether it's arrows, I've always enjoyed building arrows, because it takes just as much labor to build a nice set of wood arrows for someone. So, but I don't make them for people anymore, but I used to. And obviously knocking together. Sorry, go.
Your arrows are beautiful. Like they're artwork.
Thank you. I do. I have, and I've probably been building arrows for about 15 years, I suppose, maybe longer. Building for friends now, mainly, and my own. I'll just get in a mindset where I go, oh, I want to try a different crest, or I want to try a different color variation, or whatever, and I'll just build them over, a number of weekends, from staining them to straightening them and all the rest of it. And the amount of times I'll singly go back to one arrow to work on it is, I'd lose count. But I think I worked out, I straightened them from both ends, hand and eye straightening, along the lines of probably 8 times, I think, in my process of building a dozen wood arrows. So, and it's just something I enjoy. When I first got into traditional archery was about 20 years ago, I suppose. Now I've been shooting recurve and longbows, but it was sort of the height of, before Snyder got a hold of it, it was the height of the traditional Bowhunter magazine, and everyone sort of shot a nice quiver of, whether it be a bow quiver or back quiver, of handmade POC shafts, and it was just a nice time to sort of get into shooting a longbow and recurve. There was a lot of information on there. There was no Facebook, no Instagram. You just had forums that you could jump on and ask a question, and the help would just flood through, on how to make arrows. And there's also a number of books out there as well that I touched on. But yeah, this is something I like to do, and there's nothing better than making a good set of wood arrows and going hunting with them and shooting an animal. It's just a good feeling. And then, because you can make a pretty arrow, but you've got to make an arrow that can fly right as well. That's, that is paramount.
I think that Australia, and granted, I haven't been to Australia yet. I've not hunted Australia. I was supposed to be there for a month this summer.
That's right.
That got canceled along with everything else.
Mm.
I think Australia is one of the greatest hunting opportunities in the world.
It is, mate. It is.
Yeah, it's amazing what you guys have.
Yeah, and it's a good location because I'll start at the beginning, but the US dollar compared to the Australian dollar is around 70 cents at the moment. So you're going to get roughly 30 cents on top of your dollar, just for being here, for the exchange rate. But not only that, we've got such an array we got 6 different deer species you can hunt in all times of the year, all parts of the country. Then you got water buffalo. Then you got the other feral species as well, like camels, donkeys in the red centre of Australia. You can hunt them any time of the year because they're considered feral. Feral goats, pigs, foxes, you name it. We've got a lot of hunting here that is untouched, and the country. When you say to someone, "Oh, if you put Australia will fit into the United States quite easily in size wise, it's about the same size." So when you explain that to an American, they go, "Oh, okay, that's a decent. It's just not a small island. No, it's a pretty big island." So, but yeah, we've got a lot of good hunting here, and there are a few people that run, obviously, hunting operations here. Like anywhere, I say to people, if they're interested in coming, reach out to someone that's here and do your homework, because whether it be Africa, the US, Canada, New Zealand, there's always going to be sharks. So just make sure you are not saying that we're all sharks. Just do your homework on flying halfway around the world to hunt somewhere that is a legitimate hunting operation and in good numbers with good references, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and Aussies tend to be very helpful in my experience. Like every time I've asked anybody anything, like y'all have gone way out of your way to make sure that I get the answer, get connected with whoever's the expert in that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's generally the hunting community. Like, and it sort of stems. It can be twofold. Like, people like to help people, like us, whether it be traditional archery or arrow building or whatever, or hunting. Like, it's the same as if I was going to go and backpack hunt, and which I have done in the US. I'd be sort of leaning on a couple of guys that have a bit of knowledge and saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about backpacking into here after elk or mule deer or whatever. What do you reckon?" And because you're from out of state, you're either going to get two responses, nothing, or someone's going to go, "Okay, well, you go and have a look here because you're not going to be back here for another 5 years or whatever." You can hardly see an Aussie flying over every year for every elk season. Some might, but, most of us have jobs and a normal working class. So that's how a lot of guys, the way I look at it. And the same as if you were to come over here, James, and you'd say, "Oh, I really want to hunt buffalo." Okay, well, I'll reach out to a few guys and see what we can come up with in good areas to take you, or whether it be red deer or fallow deer or sambar or anything like that, or even New Zealand. Like, I've hunted New Zealand a couple of times. But if you reached out to me, "Hey, do you know anyone in New Zealand?" I say, "Yes, speak to this guy." If he doesn't know, he will be able to point you in the right direction of someone that does. And it's a thing you see a lot as well as swap hunts. So, yeah, that's another good option.
And you've written about hunting quite a bit. So in addition to being a warfighter and a hunter, you're also an author.
Yeah, I write for our leading bow hunting magazine. It comes out twice a year. It's quite a thick, big magazine. I've written a number of articles for them, and I have a constant back page, sort of a thought-grabbing article on, can be a number of things. I wrote one recently on the use of drones and hunting, so a little bit ethically based. Sometimes it's just a short story. And then there's a couple of other publications I've written for here in Australia, as well as traditional Bowhunter out of the US. I've had a couple of articles published in those with those guys as well, and they're like, some of them are hunting here and also hunting in New Zealand, and a couple of trips I've done to Africa as well that I've had published. But yeah, I enjoy writing. I don't get enough time to do it now, which I'm trying to change, James, hopefully. But we just seem to be pushed for time, and I really do need to knuckle down, because what I've actually got brewing is a book of short stories.
Oh, really?
And but it's all fictional based, if that makes sense, loosely based on history. So, yeah, I need to finish those to get them to a publicist here, to put them into a book of. It's going to be about 5 or 6 short stories that are ranged from 5,000 to 7,000 words. And I've got some of them are still sort of half written. I've got notes everywhere, posted notes on my phone, notes on my iPad, notes still in my head. So yeah, hopefully that'll get done. And I should knuckle down, mate. I really should. I've been a bit slack.
Well, I look forward to reading that when you get done. I love short stories. I feel like that is the best way to communicate a thought or a feeling. People who write novels, like, God bless you, but that probably could have been edited. You cannot show me a 300-page book that doesn't have 50 pages that you could have cut out of it.
And I sort of grew up on, like, I love books. I've got a hell of a library here, and I still buy books, and I've got an e-reader, so I'm constantly reading something, whether it be magazines, books, whatever. And I just, I love reading books. I have an adventurous spirit, so I think I can write something, a little bit fictitious as such, on, moments in history with archers or warriors as such, and put it into a decent read that someone, reads it 5,000 to 7,000 words and goes, "Oh, that was pretty cool." And it sort of a snippet in time, if that makes sense. But I'm no Wilbur Smith.
Well, my degree is in literature and writing, and if you feel like you need another set of eyes, you want to bounce an idea off somebody, I'd be happy to help.
Well, I appreciate the offer, James, and I probably will flick you one or two just to run your eye over, mate, and have a look. But you might come back and go, Al, what the fuck are you thinking?
Well, if you give somebody something that you've written for the purpose of editing or developing, and they say, "Oh, it's good, I liked it," well, that was completely useless. I might as well have given it to my dog. You know?
Yeah. No, you're
So
dead right. I'd rather take the warts and all approach. I'm no Hemingway or no Wilbur Smith. So, and my wife, she's an former police officer, so she spent 15 years on the job in drug squads and all the rest of it. And if I give her something to proofread of mine, she dead set she adjusts it like it's a police brief going to court, and I just keep saying to her, "Stop, darling, you're killing me." Stop. This is not a court document. Fucking chill, woman. So we have a bit of a laugh about that because she's very factual. That's the way because that's what she's had to read and write for her, her career, her job. And now she works for a university. So even then, she's quite high up. She has to read factual stuff. Like, she can't have any fluffiness in her writing. Whereas I can, talk about how crisp a morning is, and she would just go, "What did you write that?" I said, "That's how it was." She goes, "That's too descriptive." I said, "Sweetheart, it's meant to be descriptive."
Tell me the temperature, the sky conditions, and move on.
Yeah. Where was the plaintiff standing? I don't know. But I appreciate that, man. I'll let you know. We'll be in touch on that regard. But that's where we're at with that.
What is a Pathfinder?
Well, it's got a number of names, really, or a number of origins. The original Pathfinders was from a military terminology that was given to the recce element, and I was in recon platoons and recon units when I was in the army, but it was given to airborne recce units during World War II. They were called Pathfinders, and they would go in before obviously anyone else and recce drop zones or all the rest of it. The name is loosely used in a lot of the African bush wars as well, in Rhodesia. The border wars with Angola and whatnot with the South African Defence Force. They use the terminology there. And also like how it sort of links to that very much sort of that Robin Hoodish style cloak, longbow, like a Pathfinder would be off into the woods, scouting ahead of the main body sort of thing. So that's sort of how that derivative has come up with the name of my business that we've kicked off with my wife. So, and I've been brewing on that for a while.
And brewing is the word. So tell me some more.
Yeah, well, it started off with tough head broadheads. So I was speaking to Jason, sent him an email like a year ago or even more saying, "Hey, I want to sell tough head broadheads in Australia," because he just took over the business. And we got chatting away, and he said, yeah, I'll sell you all the tough head broadheads you want. So, because I used them in Africa and I've used them here and I rate them. They're just a great broadhead, screw on and glue on broadhead, 3-to-1 ratio, kill like the red right hand of God. So I became a stockist, or I will become a stockist for them here. And then I was sort of sitting down going, I could carry other products and like set up like a little online store as such. So then I just spread my wings far and wide. So we haven't launched yet, Pathfinder Outdoors. We got an Instagram account, Facebook. We don't do Facebook that much, but obviously we will do because there's a certain amount of people that likes the Facebook platform. My wife is building the website as we speak because she's sharper and smarter than me. But we're going to carry just niche products that aren't here in Australia regularly, if that makes sense. So I reached out to the guys at Selway Archery. I'm going to carry their quivers. Taito knives, I'm going to carry their line of knives here. Who else have we got? Tough head broadheads, Safari Tough. Chatted to Randy Cooling. I'm going to carry his line of stuff here as well. Swazi out of New Zealand. So I mean, they're readily available here, but I'm going to carry some of their products as well that I like and that I use myself. And that's what I wanted to offer: quality gear, quality outdoor equipment that I use myself, that I know works, that I know won't fail, and that I swear by, that will, stand the test of time in the bush or wherever you hunt around the world. Because I just don't want to stock products that are shit. I don't like Asian junk. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, not everything comes out of Asia is junk, but I just don't want to sell crappy products. I want to sell good kit. So,
Yeah. When you have somebody who's been in the military, folks, that means that they have had to do some really difficult jobs with some really subpar gear. And there's a complete misunderstanding in the outdoor industry that if something is mil spec, if this is what the military uses, then it's good. What that really means is that it was good enough to pass the tests, probably, but it was also the very lowest bidder.
And soldiers couldn't break it.
Yeah. Except that, so much of the stuff we used was constantly broken.
Yeah.
I think that maybe even especially in combat, 50 to 70% of our energy was spent simply fixing and maintaining things.
Exactly.
So when you take a guy who's been in this type of environment and then you relocate him to another industry like hunting, the gear that those people are attracted to is absolute no fail. This is the thing to use gear, because they've suffered failure too much and suffered the consequences of it. So when you're picking something out, I've never been around that broadhead, but I guarantee you I'm going to look it up as soon as we're done here, because I know that if that's what you're going to, that is a high quality item that I need to seriously consider.
100%. You're dead right, James. And I couldn't. And just to touch on mil spec, and I mean, yes, it has its places, but what people need to realize is if something is selected by the military to use, it has to tick a number of boxes. Price, usability, serviceability, how much is, how quickly can the product be put into service and resupped into service. So it's a lot of factors have to be ticked, not just because it's good. It might be good on one scale, but on the rest of the part of the pie, it might be shit. So, and that's what differentiates a lot of SF units. They're buying small, so they can go out and buy these Gucci awesome bits of weaponry or whatever, because they're only buying small amounts and they can get it quickly and they know it works and they're not selling to the broader army. So, but you're dead right. The Australian Army for a long time, and it's still the case, like we dead set looked like a bunch of mercenaries when I was in recce platoon, because we had South African chest webbing. We had the only thing issued on us was their camouflage clothing, because everything else was bought external. We had different boots, and our CO at the time, he just said, as long as it's functional and won't let you down in the bush, I don't care, and it's camouflage, I don't care. So we run right with that, and it would still be the same today. The guys would just be having all sorts of non-issued kit just to do their job correctly. So that's my background in stocking kit and items for Pathfinder Outdoors. That's the only shit I want to sell that I know will work, that I know won't fail. And if it does fail, it might be a one-off, and then I'll just honour that anyway as well. Okay, you use the knife as a screwdriver, righto. Have 40% off the next knife, and don't be so dumb next time. So that's why I've reached out to guys like Taito, and I've even got some things brewing with Kafaro International in regards to a few items that we got on the drawing board. I can't say too much, but obviously, and Aaron, I don't know whether you know Aaron that well, and that's why he carries a lot of weight in the industry, because he obviously has a military background, but he tests that. He tests stuff. He tests it in the field environment for weeks, months on end, or gives it to guys, the same thing that test it and absolutely pull something apart and go, this is good, but change that. So those items, that ethos, that aim of quality kit is how we will, sell our business. And that's our aim and goal is the products we sell. So, but yeah, I can't say too much on what I'm doing with Aaron, but we've got some products in development. Whether they carry them as well as up to Aaron, and we haven't spoke about that yet. But yeah, watch that space. We've got some cool things being jointly collaborated together with. So yeah.
Good for you, man. That's really exciting. I actually just bought my first Kafaru pack. It's sitting right next to me right now. I've got it adjusted. I haven't filled it up with weight yet, but I'm going to take it mountain goat hunting
Awesome.
yeah, in just a little over a month.
Oh,
So,
excellent. And I was never like I have still got my 20-year-old Alice pack that I've sewn pouches on, and because I've slept with that pack dead set more times than probably my wife, because I am so attached to it. It's a great Alice pack. It does everything. It's got pouches everywhere. It's probably, seen heaps of service, heaps of trips, heaps of bush time. I know it works. As much as I love Kafaru gear, and Aaron takes the piss out of me. He's like, "You still rolling that Alice pack?" I said, "Yeah, I can't get. It's like a faithful dog. I just can't. I can't walk it down the road yet." So, but I mean, I've all of Kafaru's gear is standout, made to use quality stuff, and hopefully we get that off the ground this year. We just again see what Aaron says on their timeline. They're massively overworked at the moment, but they're just changing a few things in their warehousing, so we should have a few products in development shortly. But yeah, and again, to come full circle, that's why Aaron has a lot of knowledge, and people respect that because he's truthful. He's not just selling shit because someone's given him stuff or offered him money. He stands behind what he sells. So I have the same mentality and ethos with our business as well. But as I mentioned to you the other day, I'm getting into the coffee business.
I'm excited about the coffee business. I am utterly useless without an amount of caffeine in my body on a daily basis. And it's not like I drink coffee all day long, but it is how I start the day. And I'm pumped about that picture that you sent me. Are we allowed to talk about that? That's pretty cool.
We can. So I've teamed up with, I should say, my wife and I've teamed up with a fellow veteran-owned, veteran-operated Australian coffee company called Warfighter Coffee, and they're based up in Townsville, which is where a lot of our army bases are anyway. They're obviously veterans themselves, spent time in the Middle East and all the rest of it. Good lads. Started their own business similar to, I guess, Black Rifle. They have their own coffee shop in Townsville, and they actually roast their own beans, and they've won awards for a couple of their brews. So I sent them an email about a month and a half ago, I suppose, just explained who I was, my background, and that I had an idea on these little drip filter coffee bags. So for those that haven't seen them, and they're not in the US, I do believe. I haven't seen them over your way, so hopefully I get some foot in the market there, James. But what they are is you as explained in that photo I sent you, you tear the top off, and these little cardboard, it's like a coffee bag, but these little ear wing things fold over the edge of your cup, and then you pour hot water over the ground coffee that was inside the coffee bag, and then that just drips into your cup. Quite, not drips, I should say. It flows into your cup, and then just fills your cup up with good quality coffee that's been sealed in an individual bag. So I spoke to them. They're keen for it. They said, "Yeah, let's get this rolling." And these little white coffee bags as such, they're made in Japan, and they're originally made for tea. But the coffee people of the world soon realized, hey, they're going to make good coffee bags. So we've got some things in place to get them made up. I will have some in your location, James, in under a month, mate. So hold off. But if anyone wants to, if anyone follows our socials, they'll soon see some photos up there of what we got planned happening.
Well, I'm going to give you just a quick Australian Warfighter coffee story because I feel like this is the most appropriate time to tell this.
Righto.
I was on an operation with Australian Commandos. It was extremely kinetic. I think, we ended up taking over 30 casualties in the course of just a couple days. Shit. And at one point we were in just a classically ripping firefight, as much of a fire exchange going both directions as I was ever a part of.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and lots of small arms fire impacting the tank, which is not that big of a deal, but you are still getting shot, and you know it's intense. And there's a couple Aussies over behind a wall, and you know they're shooting a little bit too, and it was getting to the point where one of us was going to have to establish a little bit more of a base of fire so that the other could maneuver. And all of a sudden the Aussies quit shooting, and I'm still getting impacted by a lot of rounds, and some RPGs kind of whistle past, and now, you know, I've fully got my attention at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I got on the radio and said, you know, you guys kind of need to get in the game here. And they didn't call back. They were busy. So I swing the turret of my tank over and look at these guys, and they'd plopped down behind a wall and busted out a jet boil and were brewing up some coffee.
That does not surprise me in the least.
No, not at all. And they just couldn't be bothered. You know, it was tea time. Like we're gonna have a cup of coffee.
We're gonna get a brew on bush brew. We're gonna get a bush brew.
Totally.
Yep.
And and the dudes we were fighting against broke contact. I guess they figured something big was coming in, and they left, and that was the end of it. And at the end of this mission, I ended up going back to their base in Kandahar, and they gave me a jet boil and said, never miss an opportunity to brew up. Like, it'll solve a lot of problems.
Changes your perspective as well.
Yeah. And it is the absolute truth. Like, if you've got some stuff going on in your life, maybe the solution or the beginning of the solution is to sit down and have a cup of coffee. So I'm excited to be able to support that company, and I'm looking forward to seeing that product.
No, awesome, mate. I'll like you said, and these are the reason I'm doing them is not because of, you know, I want to buy a new Ferrari with the profits of coffee. It is because I've used these particular drip filter coffee bags before. I know they work, but they're great for backpack hunting. You can use them at home in the kitchen or you know, in your workshop, whatever. But they're sold singly in a sealed bag with 14 grams of coffee, and they will be sold in a 10-pack. So if you're going away you say you're going on your goat hunt, which I'll hopefully have some to you before then, you just put that 10-pack gusset bag in your backpack, and you've got coffee. You've got 10 rounds of coffee there. Or if you're going for 5 days, you know, take 5 or however many you drink a day. But they're in individually sealed bags as well that are perfect for backpacking, and it's good quality coffee. Like I said, these guys have won awards for it. That's their thing. That's what they wanted to get into when they left the Defence Force. They wanted to get into coffee, and they're doing it quite well. And they're a veteran-owned business, and they're also they send profits back into a lot of young veterans' causes here in Australia. So they're not shy in you know, not just taking all the money, all the profits, and you know, oh, look at us, we've got a social media following, blah blah blah. That's just a byproduct. That, you know, A, they want to sell a good product, but B, they want to help young veterans like themselves. The other month, they had the Prime Minister up there in their coffee shop having a brew with them. So there you go, the Australian Prime Minister having a brew with some veterans from Warfighter Coffee.
Well, that's awesome. Where can people find out more about you and kind of follow along with what's happening with Pathfinder and with Al Kidner?
Yeah, well, I've got my Instagram handle is the real Al Kidner, in case there's a fake one out there. That's my handle on Instagram, and then the Pathfinder Outdoors. If you find one or the other, you'll see they're linked. But my personal account is the real Al Kidner, Kidner. And Pathfinder Outdoors is the business account. If people want to go there, give it a follow. Click on the link in the bio, and that'll take you to our website, which is still being built as we speak. But you can sign up to the newsletter, keep up to date on our launch dates. And the only reason we haven't launched is that we're just waiting on, because of the world situation with COVID, a lot of our products haven't landed from the US. They're still in customs, still on their way. The guys from Taito are just sorting out, finalising their order to get some Taito knives to us. We got our order of Swazi garments the other day, so they're here. Obviously, New Zealand's not that far, but and it's just getting everything compiled here, and then we're going to launch. I just don't want to have products on our website and people go and click on them and they go, oh, it's not there, because we're waiting on it to be shipped here. And we've got a few cards up our sleeve as well, but that's pretty much where people can find us, or even on Facebook. Just look up Pathfinder Outdoors, and the logo is like a Robin Hood looking dude with a longbow and a back quiver on, so which I'd drawn up a while back. So that's a great logo that we've hopefully gets a brand and gets a bit of a following.
Well, I wish you all the best, and I'm very grateful to you for taking the time to talk with me. You're a really interesting guy, and you're a great role model for the hunting community. I love following your stuff, and I really hope to get you up here and get you on an elk or something like that one of these days. And I cannot wait to come to Australia.
Well, James, we'll make that happen. I've actually hunted elk, just quickly. I hunted elk back in 2009 in Colorado. Had a great time. Put a shot over the back of a massive big bull. He was huge. I got unfinished business with elk. But and there's a few other critters I want to kill in North America as well. And I'm sure you've got a few that you want to kill on my side of the globe. So we can sort something out, buddy.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thanks again, sir, and I wish you all the best.
Good on you, James. Thanks for your time, buddy.
Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the show. This episode was edited by Emily Brannigan, with original music written and performed by Justin Hay. Artwork for the Six Ranch podcast was created by John Chatterlin and digitized by Celia Christofferson. If you enjoyed the show, I encourage you to share it with a friend and subscribe. You can find photos and more content on Instagram at Six Ranch Podcast. I'll catch you next week.